Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. CBS News correspondent David Martin reports tonight that a U.S. warplane has fired at what it thought was a threatening Iranian aircraft. It happened in the Persian Gulf, and word of it came after another ship was hit by a mine outside that Gulf in what had been considered safe waters. Our coverage begins with Doug Tennell.
The Texaco Caribbean was fully loaded with Iranian crude oil and sailing alone to a deep-water anchorage just outside the Gulf when an explosion ripped a gaping 12-foot hole in its port side. Oil poured into the sea. A cloud of gas fumes filled the air for miles around the American-operated crew flooded the decks to prevent a fire. The captain radioed shore that he had struck a mine. The Texaco Caribbean had become the latest victim in a new phase of the tanker war, the mining of the oil lanes. It was unforeseen by the U.S. Navy and even by some of the most experienced Gulf mariners as well.
What is unusual is that the incident occurred outside the Gulf in waters that had been considered almost 100% safe. An international anchorage for tankers where only a few days ago U.S. Navy warships were forming up the second convoy to Kuwait.
500 miles away, the three Kuwaiti tankers and their American escorts in the convoy stopped short of Kuwaiti waters yesterday, where more mines were reportedly discovered in the channels of the northern Gulf. With the supertanker Bridgeton still waiting today for its orders to begin the return trip out of the Gulf, it seemed America's plans were everywhere at the mercy of mines and those who planted them. They pose an anonymous, random threat, especially to Navy warships like the American guided missile cruiser Fox, which sailed into the Gulf earlier today. The Fox was on a little-noticed mission, escorting the tanker Alabama through the Strait of Hormuz. A second ship from Saudi Arabia followed close behind. This informal convoy cleared the strait without incident.
Navy warship 3-3, this is CBS News on board Bravo Oscar. How's it going today? Over.
Roger, CBS. This is Navy warship 3-3. Routine day. Over.
It was also a routine day for the U.S. ships just standing by at sea for the arrival of a fleet of helicopter minesweepers still a day away. But for the Texaco Caribbean, it was anything but. Doug Tennell, CBS News in the Gulf.
To underscore and put in perspective what's happening, let's go to our special CBS News relief map of the area. Iran, Iraq, Kuwait jammed up next to the war and those warring nations around the Persian Gulf. This is the area that has always been considered the most dangerous. Indeed, the Bridgeton, the tanker hit early on by a mine, was roughly in this area. Now, what's so important about what happened today with the second mining is that it happened so far away. It wasn't in the Persian Gulf. It was all the way back down in here, outside the Strait of Hormuz, in the Gulf of Oman, which in turn opens into the Indian Ocean. The Gulf of Oman was considered so far away, more than 500 miles from where the Bridgeton was hit, outside the Strait of Hormuz. Everybody considered this safe water. Nobody expected any ship of any nationality to be hit in there. As for the most recent developments, the three Kuwaiti tankers, which are now moving again in the Persian Gulf up toward Kuwait with the U.S. Navy escort, are in the most dangerous area, the Persian Gulf. And the incident with the Iranian aircraft is presumed to have happened in and around the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. For details on that, we go now to our Defense Department correspondent, David Martin. David?
Dan, the U.S. has fired its first shot in anger in the Persian Gulf. Administration officials tell CBS News that a U.S. Navy warplane fired a missile at a radar contact it believed was an Iranian jet. The American plane thought the Iranian jet was preparing to attack an unarmed Navy patrol plane. However, the missile did not hit anything, and U.S. officials are now in doubt whether the radar contact was real. The incident occurred over the weekend as U.S. Navy warships did convoy duty for three Kuwaiti oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. ships were using for the first time a state-of-the-art Aegis cruiser to track Iranian aircraft. The Pentagon is saying almost nothing about this latest escort in accordance with a memo signed by Defense Secretary Weinberger warning that loose lips sink ships.
It may not have dawned on some of you, but to talk about, report on future operations of these ships, about the tactics and other details, is very much a situation that could endanger someone's life over there. We're not going to contribute to that.
Even Democratic critics of the administration's Persian Gulf policy appear to agree the less said, the better.
Given the fact that we're going to be there a while, reduce our profile. reduce our high visibility in the thing so that we're not sort of strung out there as the big Satan for the Iranians to attack.
We will probably never know for certain what happened in that air incident over the weekend, but it is the most dramatic indication yet of the hair trigger in the Persian Gulf. Dan?
David, why would a highly trained, highly disciplined, one of America's best Navy pilot fire on another aircraft without solid provocation?
Dan, the rules of engagement in the Persian Gulf allow Navy pilots to fire on any contact showing hostile intent. So if this plane was in range to fire at that Navy patrol plane, the pilot was following his orders.
David Martin at the Pentagon. For the second time this year, a bus carrying U.S. servicemen in Greece has been the target of terrorists. A remote-controlled car bomb exploded today in Athens as the bus passed by. 10 airmen were slightly hurt. Police say the bomb was planted in a car carrying U.S. diplomatic plates. The bus was taking the servicemen to a hotel from an airbase 6 miles away. There's been no claim yet of responsibility. That bombing came just a month before crucial talks open on a very controversial issue, the future U.S. military presence in Greece. Alan Pizzi has details.
The United States is about to be dragged into a national referendum. The lease on nearly 24 joint U.S.-Greek military facilities here expires next year. Greeks want the U.S. to give up what Athens sees as a tilt in favor of Greece's traditional enemy, Turkey. Such a move would effectively force American negotiators to come up with lease terms acceptable to an often anti-American Greek public. Diplomatic sources here called that disturbing and unacceptable political conditions. And the stage is set for a showdown that will threaten U.S. Sixth Fleet operations in the eastern Mediterranean. The Neamakri base is a pivotal communications and Middle East electronic eavesdropping facility. Helenikon Air Base is crucial for air supply and naval reconnaissance. Situated on a main road at Athens International Airport, Helenikon is the most visible symbol of American interests here. Most of the base personnel and their families live in the area. Their spending power is a significant contributor to the estimated $130 million a year the U.S. bases add to the Greek economy. Papandreou has charged that the bases serve only American interests, but they also serve NATO interests. The Greeks see their place in NATO as protection against Turkey, which is also a NATO member. It's a hazardous balancing act for all sides.
In the words of a diplomat here, if Papandreou wants to be part of the Western alliance and enjoy its protection, he's going to have to make some sacrifices. As far as the bases are concerned, the U.S. is not about to give in to Greek politics. CBS News, Athens.
In the Rocky Mountains near Denver today, a traveler's nightmare. A boulder rolled down a mountainside into a moving sightseeing bus. At least 6 people died. From Colorado, Bob McNamara reports.
The right side of the bus was almost peeled away by the collision with the boulder. Witnesses saying the driver tried avoiding the 1-ton rock but couldn't. Passenger seats were crushed by the impact, and several victims were thrown from the bus. The dead were 3 men and 3 women.
We started working on the people that were still alive. The ambulance, showed up. Everybody was doing what they could.
Among the 16 injured, at least 5 of those airlifted to Denver hospitals were listed in critical condition. The accident happened on a mountain road 30 miles west of Denver in Colorado's Central Rockies near the resort of Winter Park. The bus with 28 passengers was on a day-long sightseeing tour out of Denver. Passengers were American as well as foreign tourists, including several Japanese. Tonight, investigators say it was a highway road crew that triggered the boulder's fall into the bus. That in clearing rock from a cliff above the roadway, the crew dislodged the boulder and it fell several hundred feet into the bus. Criminal charges are not expected to be filed. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Denver.